Okay, welcome, welcome, welcome. So we have women on the call, on the video, some women listening just on their phones. We can't see you, but we welcome you. And this is part 3 of our 3-part open house series. So this is our final open house. Our practitioner program begins in 8 days, which is really, really exciting. And we began with part 1, which was plant spirit medicine communication, and part 2 was the art of counseling and coaching and mentorship, which was really deep and profound actually. And now part 3 is flower essences for betrayals, healing betrayals, strengthening our boundaries, and increasing our self-worth, which every woman really needs. So for those of you who know me, then welcome. And for those of you who don't know me, welcome. My name is Joanne Ameya, and I'm the founder of the Woman Rising School. And there we really journey through earth wisdom and moon mysteries to come home to our truest self. Without sounding too vague, it really is all about peeling away our conditionings, the untruths that we've taken on as truths, and coming back to the true essence of who we are. And so this series is really for women who have been kind of tiptoeing around wanting to join the Woman Rising Flower Essence Practitioner Certification Program that we offer once a year. This program is my heart and soul. I could teach it every day for my life if I could. And it's really meant for those of you who are already practitioners who are feeling called to deepen, and for women who, many women enter this program who are not practitioners, who work 9-to-5 jobs, but they're feeling the call to go deeper in their own emotional healing and using the energies and the medicines of plants. So wherever you are on your path, we welcome you and we honor you, and we'll have some time for questions later about the content that I'm going to be teaching and also about the practitioner program. The practitioner program does begin in 8 days. There is one partial scholarship still available, and it is by application only. So that's an important piece because I need and want to speak to every woman who's enrolling to make sure that it's the next step for both you and for me and for us as a collective. So all of that information can be found on our website. And I'm actually just going to write our website down here in the corner in the chat box, just so that, you can read more. And if you have questions, you can ask us while we're here live. So let's start with a grounding, as we do, to really get us here into this present moment and moving, just shifting our energy from what we have been doing throughout the day to what we are doing right now. So I'm just trying to get the good light here so you can all see me really well. And we'll just begin by closing our eyes. So wherever you are, obviously, if you're driving, please don't close your eyes, but wherever else you are, if you can, just simply closing your eyes. Taking some nice, deep, cleansing breaths. Moving your energy throughout your body, through your breath. Just really inviting yourself to arrive in this moment, leaving behind anything that doesn't need to be here with you. Any of your to-do list. That this is sacred time that you're setting aside for you, for your growth, for potentially the work that you do in the world with others, and for your deepening union with nature. So we welcome in Mother Earth, thanking Thanking you, Mother Earth, for being here with us, for grounding us and anchoring us into your wisdom, your traditions, for constantly nourishing us and nurturing us. May we walk the path of our highest good and our highest service gently and consciously upon you. And calling forth the great mystery, calling forth the energies of the unseen to be with us now, to help us truly remember who we are, why we're here, and the power that we hold. And we call on the flower essences to teach us, to guide us, to heal us. And as you sit here imagining a sister to the left of you and a sister to the right of you, this global sisterhood of those who are called to deepen into plants, to deepen into their own emotional healings and freedoms and liberations, knowing that we are never alone. And we give gratitude for technology and for offering us this sisterhood through this amazing platform where we can come together with ease, no matter how many miles apart we live. And so anchoring this in with 3 more really deep, conscious breaths. And when you have arrived, you can very gently open your eyes, letting a little light in at first, and then making your way into full opening. So we welcome you. We welcome you whether you're here live or you're going to be listening to the replay. It is, as I was saying in the beginning, my great honor to share and teach about the wisdom and the medicine of flower essences. And so this is part 3 of our open house series for our Woman Rising Flower Essence Practitioner Certification Program that begins in a week. Oh my gosh, so exciting. Such an exciting time. So many women hearing the call of the plants, and I just get to hold space for you to come into our circle. So today we're going to be talking about flower essences for healing betrayal, strengthening our boundaries, and increasing self-worth. And they all go together, right? And so I just want to talk about this, and there's a couple things that I'm going to speak to, and then we'll see if there's questions or shares. So basically, why I'm saying they all go together is when there is betrayal, there's generally a boundary crossed. When there's a boundary crossed with a betrayal, there's generally damage done to our self-worth. And it can go the other way. When there's a boundary crossed, it usually means some part of us has been betrayed. And of course, our self-worth, our deservability, how we view ourselves and what's possible for ourselves is highly impacted. So the beauty of flower essences is they get to not just work on that one specific, event, experience, trauma, but they really then will work on all these different parts of yourself that are being affected by that specific event or experience. So I'm just going to speak for a moment about flower essences, because some of you who have been following me know now about flower essences. Maybe you've taken our home study course, or you've watched our free videos, and maybe this is really new, but you've just been feeling the call to go deeper. So flower essences can be tricky to define because they're really the energetic of spirit. They're the language of the unseen. But the best way that I've come to explain about them over the years is that if you believe that you have an essence, or you have a spirit, or that nature, I'm going to be looking outside because I have these like gorgeous oak trees that are just towering over my house right now in my neighborhood. If you believe that nature has a spirit or an essence, then this is actually a really easy definition for you to take on and hold and believe, is that when you ingest a flower essence, and a flower essence is literally the essence, the spirit, the vibration, the energetic of a plant, a flower, a tree, a mushroom, when you ingest that, and that essence meets your essence, meets your spirit. And so anything that's not of spirit, so that means really these human feelings of pain, wounding, trauma, imprints, anything that's not of spirit, which is pure and holy, is really starts to be dismantled and dissipated and dissolved and ultimately healed. And so it's this beautiful process. And some people think of flower essences as like really airy-fairy. And I really like to ground them in a very clinical way, because I've seen them work on every issue over the past 16 years of doing this work, from deep, horrific sexual trauma to perhaps just a low-level anxiety or overwhelm. So they run the gamut, and they are used in a very clinical way. And sometimes they are subtle. Sometimes there's this subtle nuance where you find yourself easily creating a boundary with your mother, your father, your beloved. And sometimes they are asking you to go so deep into feeling that they can be tremendously painful. And that's a really beautiful thing. We want you to have that experience with flower essences, because they're inviting you to go into these places that have experienced woundings, and inviting you to clear them, to reparent them, to repair them, so that you're living from a really free place in this present moment. And when I say that, I say that knowing that it takes a lot of commitment and devotion to your spiritual and emotional path. Is most of the time we're making choices, we're living based on a wound from the past. And this could be a past from a year ago, or it could be from when we were 5 years old or 2 years old. And sometimes these are so deep and so subconscious that we don't even realize that we're living through these imprints. And so as a 40-year-old or 50-year-old or 25-year-old, you're making decisions based on that 5-year-old or 2-year-old self. And what flower essences are so brilliant at is helping you to heal those past things, so that in the moment you're actually making decisions not just rooted in your essence, but really from that 25-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old self. And that to me is emotional freedom. That's liberation. When you are in the present and not everything is dictated from the past. And so to me, I have my own journey and story, which I'm always happy to share about. And I share quite a lot about it in the Flower Essence Practitioner course. But to me, using these essences, they've been my main tool, my main modality for emotional healing, and they've saved my life. And so I want to support them and support you to use them, because so many of us as women are really suffering. We're challenged. We're replaying the same patterns, the same thoughts, the same experiences, and we're just feeling stuck and in a rut. Or we take a couple steps forward and then we plateau and we're still dealing with things. And so I just feel so inspired to share about the flower essences, because I want women to feel in their empowered self. And I want women to feel inspired and enthusiastic to live the lives that they're really yearning for deep within. So when we talk about betrayals and boundaries and self-worth, so many of these wounds that we're holding on to that have been imprinted into us are really affecting our present lives, and they're not allowing us to live free. And so when we're living from betrayals, we generally don't trust people. We close off to people. We can't fully open to be intimate, whether that's with ourselves or others. And I'm not just talking about an intimate experience, intimate relationship. I'm like with your partner, it's, with friends, with coworkers, with anyone. There's betrayal creates mistrust and sort of like dis-ease in your own self around other people. It creates a feeling of being misunderstood. Boundaries being crossed does similar things. We don't trust people, or especially for women, we override our boundaries. So we continue to say yes when really we want to be saying no. We deprioritize ourselves. We put ourselves at the bottom of the to-do list, and we never get to the bottom of the to-do list. So, and then of course, damage to our self-worth. We all see this in our own lives. And with those that we love, is we're plagued by not good enoughs, not pretty enough, not smart enough, not good enough to experience that will never happen for me. Life is too hard. I'm not worthy. I'm not deserving. All of these things. It's constant looping that women are experiencing in themselves. And it's creating this tragic experience when really we're at a time in this world right now where we're needing not just women, all people, but I'm speaking specifically to women. So we're needing women to really rise into their empowered selves, to change the trajectory of our individual lives, within our communities, and ultimately with the planet. So flower essences to me feel like the medicine of now. They're like, I feel in myself an impatience. Like in myself, I'm like, how can I get this medicine out even more quickly? How can I get this medicine into the hands of even more women? How can I get more women into this flower essence practitioner program because of the suffering and that women are experiencing, and because we're needing women who are coming back into their whole selves to really shift what's happening right now on this planet. So you'll see in myself, like there's a little impatience because I'm trying to really figure out how do I keep moving this information out into the world. And nature keeps just telling me it's all happening. Calm down. It's all happening. It's all in divine plan. So I'm listening to that as well. So so flower essences. So let's talk about betrayals. And well, actually, before I go there, I just want to presence the second chakra. So the second chakra is the place physically, it's between your belly button and the top of your pubic bone. And it's this place where boundaries, betrayals, self-worth is all sitting, and that's where it all accumulates. So all these traumas start to sit in the second chakra, and we feel them emotionally, but then we also end up, when they're unresolved, we then get physical health symptoms and issues. So there's a epidemic right now of women who are experiencing a whole spectrum of reproductive health issues, from painful cycles to fertility issues to low libido to PCOS to endometriosis to amenorrhea. Like there's tons of women's reproductive issues. And to me, whenever I see that, I always look at the deeper piece of what's the emotions. So to me, it's always what boundaries have been crossed, where are the betrayals, and how is your self-worth being affected? Because that's literally where everything sits in the second chakra. That's the wounding to the feminine. So in the Flower Essence Practitioner program, we get really into understanding the second chakra. And when you're listening to a woman's story, making sure that you're really clear on how her story is affecting her second chakra in her present life. So when these traumas are unresolved, they're playing out always in the present. So a woman might be talking about her relationship with her partner or a lack of finances, but if we follow the thread, and again, we talked about this in our part 2 video of how to really counsel someone back to the original wound, and then ultimately back to the original blueprint of who they are. But so we're constantly just in the inquiry of, even though she's talking about what's happening in her present life, it all comes from the past. And with flower essences, the deeper you can get with a woman, the more you can get into the root, the more powerful your flower essence formula will be, and the quicker she will heal. So let's talk about betrayals. There's tons of different betrayals. And therefore, there's different flower essences that you can use for different betrayals, right? So we have betrayals that are sexual in nature. We have, as we know, there's an epidemic of women and young girls who are being sexually violated, molested, exploited. And so there's flower essences for betrayals that are more sexual in nature. There's flower essences for betrayals when it comes from mother or father, or there's a lot of betrayals that come within religious institutions, right? So we know that's actually a whole nother story I don't know if I need to get into, but we know that many young children have been molested by rabbis, priests, and they carry this wounding and this imprint throughout their lives. And it's really important that we support everyone to healing. So betrayals can come in very loud ways, right? So that, like a very loud betrayal of sexual assault or violation. And then there's also betrayals that are like quieter, that we almost forget are betrayals. So I share a little bit at this point about my own story, because it kind of illustrates like a subtle betrayal is most children are betrayed by their parents in the sense of many women. And I know like I said, I've been doing this for 16 years. So I would say 90% of my clients have had this level of betrayal where their parents had such dysfunction in who they are, whether it was just emotional unavailability, or they were alcoholics, or they were workaholics, that they became their parents' caretaker, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And that's a really big betrayal. Because as a child, you are meant to be a child. You are meant to be cared for and nourished and nurtured, and not be the one who's caretaking. So that's like such a nuanced, subtle betrayal, because it becomes very normal. And when we talk about betrayal, we're usually thinking or looking at these like kind of bigger violations and bigger abuse, but betrayal can actually show up in very subtle ways as well. So yes, it could be a partner cheating on you sexually, or somebody molesting you, but it can also show up in a friend sharing something that you shared in private with her, or a parent who was emotionally unavailable that you then had to caretake and support. So I'm going to share a couple flower essences because, obviously we all have different stories, and I don't know who's on the call and what your story is, or who's listening to the replay and what your story is. So I'm just going to share ones that I use often. So if you're on my Instagram, you saw that I shared one today, which is Blackberry Lily. And Blackberry Lily is specifically for healing sexual trauma, sexual abuse. And so it will then go along with healing the betrayal that happens with that sexual abuse. So we always have to work with healing, not just the action itself, but the emotion that gets created, right? Because I could grow up in a household with a sibling, and we both experience the same exact thing. And we grow up and we take it on, we interpret it as children in different ways, and it affects our lives in different ways. And so sexual healing, sexual trauma, there's generally always betrayal. And we need to access that point with flower essences, besides just working on, the actual act itself. So if we're talking about betrayal of father, so if some of us were betrayed by our fathers in, like I said, either sexually, or they were alcoholics and maybe beat us, or they were emotionally unavailable and we became their parent. And so Gloriosa Lily is an amazing flower essence for when we're dealing with father issues and betrayal with father. And then I also wanted to talk to, because I know it is prevalent, this piece around like religious betrayal. We just lost a woman in our local Los Angeles community her story is atrocious and horrific, of being incredibly sexually assaulted and violated repeatedly as a young child, and growing up, and just the pain of that, it's just like the pain of that torture. And so Casablanca Lily is amazing for when there's been betrayal within your religion. And because oftentimes you then start to fear or have tremendous rage towards God. So it's really important. All these things show up completely differently in our lives, but if we can access into these places of betrayal, things start to just like, I talked about this, I think on the part 2 call, but it's sort of like a child who gets a cut or a scrape. All they want is for someone to touch that cut or scrape, right? Like as soon as it's kissed or you hold the place that they got hurt, it's like, oh, okay, everything's fine. And we do that too. Like I know the other day I walked into a table and I immediately just put my hand right on my knee, and just that moment of connect and touching in starts to dissipate. And so that's the thing with flower essences, is if we can just touch, like just with a flower essence, with the most tender essence of nature, touch into a wound, a trauma, everything starts to, like that scar tissue starts to break down. It starts to feel spacious. We can start dissolving some of these imprints that have just like hardened into that place. And it's really important. So then we talk about boundaries being crossed. So generally when there's a betrayal, there's always boundaries that are crossed. The funny thing about boundaries is that they're silent. Like we all have boundaries that we carry, but we don't really speak about them. I always tell my clients when they're starting into a new relationship, or maybe they've been in a relationship for a while and things are kind of challenging, getting messy, not sure what's going to happen with the relationship, it's always really good to create agreements and boundaries, to actually speak. This is what I'm agreeing to, and this is my boundary. Because oftentimes we don't speak them, they remain silent, and our boundaries are crossed. But the other person, especially when we're, older and choosing our partner, the other person doesn't even know they're crossing a boundary because it hasn't been spoken. And vice versa, you could be crossing your partner's boundary. And of course, that's a different boundary being crossed than something that happens to us as a child when we don't have a voice or an understanding of our boundaries or agreements, and we're put in a place that we're unsafe. So it's incredibly important when we're talking about boundaries to not just heal them, but also for you as an empowered woman, for you to get clear on what your boundaries are. And this can be from everything to like the smallest thing to the biggest, intimate sexual boundaries. So this could be boundaries of like, I really need the dishes to be done 3 times a week, to I want time to connect with my partner before we even start to kiss, before we even start to kind of move into more of those sexual realms. So there's all these boundaries and agreements that are incredibly important for each of us to really dive into for our own self, or else we don't really know how we're navigating through the world. We're constantly being hurt, but we haven't expressed our boundaries. So one of my most favorite flower essences for boundaries is Motherwort. And Motherwort, you know, herbally, when you use Motherwort, she's really good for intensity and anxiety. And when you're feeling agitated and irritable, she's the mother's herb, right? So for those of you who are mothers who are handling children, partnership, work, life, health, you know that there's moments that are, you're just irritable. Like there's just like too many things on your plate. Your hormones are going crazy. So Motherwort flower essence is similar in the sense that what I see it do is that it really creates a container to wrap around you, and it starts to lessen some of that agitation. So what I've seen with Motherwort, when I was sharing at the beginning, is there are some flower essences that are really subtle. Like you don't even have to think about your healing journey and all of a sudden you've shifted patterns. And there's some that are really like nudgy and I'm here, and you're going to feel your feelings fully, whether that means you're laying on the floor crying or you're smashing a pillow with your anger and rage, which is amazing and beautiful. But with Motherwort, what I found is it's be one of those more subtle ones. So the story over and over that I hear from women is, I don't have boundaries. I either let people walk over me, or I am I'm such a people pleaser, which again links to the self-worth piece. I'm such a people pleaser that I don't want to make a boundary because I don't want anyone to feel hurt or uncomfortable. And so what we do is, rather than other people feeling hurt or uncomfortable, we make it easy for them and we get hurt or uncomfortable by not setting a boundary. It's this really interesting thing we do in many different aspects of our healing, is we try to create such safe space for others as women that we actually end up torturing ourselves. And we stay in these like stuck, stagnant, annoying places for way too long. So with Motherwort, what I've seen her do is that all of a sudden you're just making boundaries, and it's not from this like reactionary, I'm pissed off, get out of my life, I'm creating a boundary. It's from this really deep, beautiful, love-filled way. So I remember a couple years ago, and this is how it always works when you're a practitioner, is like you'll get a couple clients who are all dealing with similar things. So I had a few clients who really wanted to make boundaries with their mother. And again, this is hard because when we're talking about our intimate relationships, mother, father, sister, brother, partner, children, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So these, I think it was three women, excuse me, I got to sneeze. These three women were all wanting to create boundaries with mother. And the way that you know that you need to create boundaries, if you don't already know, in your body, like, oh my God, I need to create a boundary, is you'll start to have physical health issues. So, and this is an important piece with flower essences, is that we're coming back into the body. So many of us have disassociated, separated from our bodies because we've had trauma. And the trauma is so painful that our spirit, our soul is just like hovering out here, waiting for safety to happen. So flower essences, through this beautiful, sweet way, create the safety for you to come back into your body and to inhabit your body. And from there, I mean, life just totally shifts because most of us are living up in here and checking out. So these three women were having, one of them specifically was having a lot of physical health issues. So every time she was on the phone with her mother, halfway through the conversation, she would get a headache. She would get a stomach ache. It was just like, it was so heavy, right? And these are signs that we need to create a boundary. They're not just like things that we want to pass by. These are signs that your energetic field is being compromised by your own self, right? So this is all about taking self-responsibility. Now, when you start to make boundaries with those that you have been in intimate experiences and relationships with, let's say like your mother, there's going to be a little push-pull because there's been roles and patterns that have been set up, right? So you create a boundary and the other person's like, wait a minute, I don't know this. And so not only is Motherwort great at having that initial boundary of, let's say for this woman, she started to feel a headache, she started to feel a little stomach ache, and she said to her mom, actually, I need to go right now. instead of just sitting and sitting and sitting and just ultimately making herself feel worse. So not only is Motherwort great at just setting that boundary, but she's also really powerful helping you stay strong in that boundary. Because again, as I was just saying, there's going to be people who butt up against it. As soon as you start making a boundary, they're like, wait a minute, that's not how things have been going. I don't like this. And so the Motherwort is just going to keep you in that place of, yes, this is my truth. This is what I need. This is my boundary. And you'll see, and depending on the person that you're making the boundary, sometimes you just get that push-pull for a little bit. And sometimes it's a little longer, but ultimately that other person starts to go, oh, okay, this is how the new relationship is going to be. Okay. And you'll notice that the relationship changes to be a way that feels most in resonance with the boundary that you created. And if not, you keep fine-tuning that boundary. Like, actually, I only want to talk to my mom once a week. So I know for me, I didn't get into like the full details earlier, but when I was starting to do work around my father and emotional wounding and betrayal, because I had kind of become his caretaker and his emotional confidant as a 9-year-old, which isn't what a 9-year-old is meant to do. When I started working with flower essences, I had to really put in powerful boundaries. So I remember one night at dinner, we were out to dinner, my dad and I, and he was starting to tell me about his relationship with my stepmom. And I was feeling in myself like just getting anxious and incredibly uncomfortable. And I knew it was because I actually, as much as I love being close with my father and love that he wants to share with me, I don't really want to know these intricate details. I want him to tell somebody else. And so I remember at dinner feeling that feeling. And I said something. It wasn't like a strong boundary, like, please don't ever tell me this ever again, but it was something. And he actually really received it. He said, oh yeah, actually, maybe I should like talk to somebody else about this. And then, I had to set in a couple more boundaries. We were talking every day. And when I felt deep into myself, it was like, how often do I really want to talk to him? Like, what would feel really good in my body? And so then I stretched it out to every few days and every week. And now it's like, we talk every like week to 10 days and our relationship has shifted, but it's in a way that feels really good. Like in my body, I feel good. So Motherwort is powerful. And then of course, when we're working on boundaries, we need to work on this part of ourselves that is a people pleaser, right? Like, I don't want to make a boundary because I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. And if we stay in that place, then we actually, we're really deminimizing our own feelings and our own personal growth. And we're putting everyone in front of us. So one of the great flower essences for this is hyssop. Hyssop flower essence is for guilt. And guilt is just a deep, deep, deep current that we own. And, sometimes we're aware that we're like kind of moving through life through guilt, but oftentimes we actually don't know. We're more aware of anger and sadness and grief and joy and rage and sorrow than grief, even shame. But I oftentimes feel, guilt, but I oftentimes feel like guilt is even deeper than shame. And guilt is that lens through which we put ourselves last, or we are more concerned about other people's well-being than our own, or we're more concerned about hurting someone else than continuing to torment our own self. So you can use hyssop with Motherwort. It can be really highly beneficial of making the boundary without tuning into guilt. Because when you're making a boundary, it's like you're almost accessing a tree. That's what I think of. It's like, when I think of a tree, I just think of like, strong rooted pillar of Gaia, just like growing out of Gaia and just shooting up, and the trunk and, the roots, everything's so strong. It needs to be strong. And that's what I think with boundaries. It's like, you have to be so strong in your boundaries. And because it's so easy to wobble out of them, and it's so easy to fall back into old patterns and fears and guilt and limiting beliefs, that all of a sudden you've talked yourself out of a boundary that you just created. So for those of you who are listening, be patient with yourself with making boundaries. Some of you are already really good, and the Motherwort's just going to dial it in even more. And some of you, it's like, you may have a day where it's easy and you're just like, wow, this is amazing. And then you may have another day where that guilt just kind of comes up, or maybe it's shame that you're prioritizing yourself, or, there's so many different things that are underneath all of our actions. And so we just be patient and gentle with ourselves, because guess what? The next day you're going to be amazing again. And that's the beauty of using flower essences, is that they're the fast track to really changing these patterns. Most of us are aware of our patterns. We know our stories. We know the things that we do that get in our own ways. It's actually changing the patterns that's the harder piece. So Motherwort, Hyssop, they're your go-tos for creating boundaries. And then, of course, when there's betrayals, when there's boundaries crossed, there's self-worth issues. We don't think of ourselves in a positive way. We put ourselves down. We think we're not good enough. We're not deserving of the longings that we hold in our heart. And I say this all with mixed with two things, is I've been there before, so I can speak to it. And I say it also with just this real kind of urgency that it's time. It's time to get out of our own way. It's time to change our patterns. It's time for all of us to really start living those longings that we have in our heart, not to just feel them and keep them tender and close, but to actually put them out and to live into them. And I feel just so passionate about that right now, is that it's just so easy to stay in the familiar. It's so easy to stay in our patterns and our limitations. And I'm just here to lovingly and fiercely remind you that it's time to shift those patterns. So there's many different things that we can use for self-worth. Again, we're always wanting to see, where did that come from? Did that come from a betrayal? Did it come from a boundary cross? Because we're touching into the root, and was that boundary crossed with father, with mother, with church, with synagogue, as we were talking about before. So let's see. I'm going to share about 2 essences that are really good for just increasing self-worth. So sometimes we just need moments where it's like we just need to get something done, and we just need to access that we are worthy, we are deserving. And so the 2 essences that can be really helpful with that are buttercup, so that beautiful golden yellow sweet flower, and Missouri primrose. And they both work for increasing our self-worth. And again, we have to look at, where are we not allowing ourselves to receive, to feel we're worthy of experiencing pleasure? Because that's ultimately what our self-worth allows us to have, whether it's the pleasure of attracting, a healthy partnership, or the pleasure of stepping out and being a healer or a practitioner, or leaving our 9-to-5 job to do so, or it's the pleasure of eating really well and taking good care of our bodies. So it's really important. Self-worth is kind of like a surface thing that encompasses many different things underneath of it. And so the Missouri primrose and the buttercup will be great. And we always need to go into the deeper places of, why is the self-worth so minimal, right? There's did you hear something when you were in first grade? Did your first grade teacher say to you, you're not smart? And you've taken that on as truth, and now you're 50 years old, and you've continued to hold that, even though you've, been a valedictorian or gone to Harvard, but deep inside you still feel like you're not smart. And these are all parts of feeling worthy or unworthy or deserving or not deserving, right? Or maybe you've been in a job for 20 years and you're like, should be promoted. I am so qualified, and you don't speak up. You don't say anything. And so again, it's like Missouri Primrose and Buttercup will be great, but what are the deeper things, right? Do you feel like, and so when I mean deeper, I mean the nuances of that. Like, do you feel unworthy of succeeding? Do you feel unworthy of being seen? Do you feel unworthy of being acknowledged? And all of those things tie back into some original wound. That original wound that we have taken on, that we've traveled with, that has been imprinted into us, and then we have numerous experiences in our lives that just validate that experience. And so by the time we're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, we believe whatever it is that has been validated. And most of it is total bullshit. It is not true. It's an illusion. It's something that our mind has created. And so flower essences, again, it's the essence, it's the spirit of a flower. And when you ingest it and it touches your spirit knows what's truth. Your spirit knows what's false. Your spirit knows what's pure and deep and holy. So those are a couple different flower essences. And just looking at the time, I want to make sure that we answer any questions or get more specific if you have specific questions, because it's like there's a whole plethora. And the thing about flower essences that I love is that it's not one size fits all. It's every woman has a unique story. And every woman has a way in which that story is playing out in her life, and therefore needs slightly different flower essences so that we can touch into that most tender place, into that wound, and dissolve those holdings on, dissolve those cobwebs, dissolve those scar tissues, so that she can have amazing emotional and physical health. So it's a huge, huge, huge topic. The second chakra, emotional healing, physical healing, tied into that, and the flower essences that we most need. So I'd love, there's only a few of you on the call, so I'd love to hear if you have any questions or shares about any of the things that I've spoken about so far. So if you're listening on the phone and we don't see you on video, there's a little chat box. It has like a little bubble, and you can type in, a question or share. And if you're on the video, you can just unmute yourself. There's a little microphone in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, of like your specific little screen, and you can unmute yourself. And we'll just take a moment. We'll see if there's questions about what I've shared, and then we'll journey on.
Joanne?
Yes.
Hi, this is Lynn.
Hi, Lynn. I recognize you from my mailing list. Yeah, I recognize your name.
Yeah, we actually had a session a while ago.
Yep.
Maybe even 2 years ago. And here I am.
Here you are.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So, yes, it's just, the synchronicities. I'm drawn into listening to this. I'm also involved in a training in Ojai, the pre and perinatal psychology work with Ray Castellino.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in the middle of that 3-year program.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of work with the nervous system. And I'm also just about to start another program that's different. It's with a woman in Canada who talks a lot about the nervous system and some self modalities to be able to work with calming the nervous system. And she's really big on sequencing, understanding the layers of what needs to come first, to really get to the root cause. And so I guess, I don't know if you could answer anything about how flower essences maybe work with the nervous system specifically, and how you, I'm sure a lot of it's intuitive, but I do know sequencing is important, to really work with traumas. So yeah, maybe anything you have to share about that.
Absolutely. It's a great question. And I'm so glad you're in Ray's training. He's, gosh, just one of the kindest, gentlest, most amazing men. I was able to have a session with him when I was pregnant.
Oh,
And
good.
it was just, yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
So what I can speak to is I may use different language, so even though with flower essences, we are working within the nervous system, I kind of look at it a little bit different. So I'm going to use slightly different words. I'm looking at it more from the perspective of the energetic system as a whole. And so one of the things that I teach, and it's really, really, really important, and one of our past students, Lauren's on the phone, she'll attest to it. I think I probably say it, I don't know, a dozen times throughout our training, is that you have to start slowly. And there is a sequence. So although we're talking to somebody and we're just like, oh my gosh, they have this trauma, and I want to give the flower essences for healing sexual trauma, and really working on these issues with their father, and I want to go there with them because I see that that's the place that's so painful and that's affecting their life. But to me, it's so much more powerful if this system, the energetic, so you could use the nervous system, but the energetic system is tenderly invited into safety. And with flower essences, you do that in many different ways. It could be that you're actually inviting the spirit or the soul to have a safe place to actually incarnate, because part of it has not fully arrived, or it's separated, or it's left. And so it's like, if you work with a being that's not fully there, you're only going to get as much results as possible. So one of the first things is let's get the system so safe, and let's actually invite the soul to really come here. And so there's specific flower essences for that. And then let's protect, sort of like when you're building a house, right? It's like, you don't start with the roof. You have to lay the foundation. And so that's what I always think about when I'm working with women, is like, okay, I hear the pain, but if we don't get them feeling protected, and like, I always imagine, and I've said this on so many different client calls, it's like, I always imagine, just after I hear a story with a woman, like wanting to snuggle her up into like a red velvety blanket, like just letting her, it brings tears to my eyes, letting her just exhale into safety. Because if we don't do that, if we don't lay the foundation for her to feel safe and protected, we could give the best flower essences and they're not going to hurt her, but they're not going to be as powerful as they could be. And so I'm always telling people, I don't necessarily have like a sequence, although I kind of do actually, in a way, just I've never used that word. It's like and that's why and actually in the flower essence training, we work with the first 3 chakras, specifically with trauma. So it's like, okay, we have to start with the first chakra. Like, we have to really root that person back in. Then we go to the second chakra, where there's betrayals and boundaries crossed, and then we go to the 3rd chakra. And if we start with the 3rd, it doesn't go very far. So yes, with flower essences, it's really important to me. It's like, go slow, move slowly. Even though you're hearing your client wants to go there, start all the way back here and just step by step, like really holding the space, because the long-term results will be so much more potent than me just wanting to please her, really, ultimately, and get to what she's feeling she needs. And most of the time, when you start from that place of the foundation of inviting the soul back in, protecting, dealing with the first chakra, the person all of a sudden is like, oh my gosh, I feel totally different. I feel like I'm becoming more of me. And so some of the time, just by starting so slowly, some of those other issues start to just disappear. We don't even have to deal with them because the person feels safe. Mm-hmm. The person has been invited to arrive. And, with women specifically, I feel like this piece about like this real big piece around being like giving them permission to exist, right? Just like simply like you were born and you exist. And that in itself can be some of the most powerful medicine that all these other traumas make us feel less than, crappy, fearful, anxiety ridden, all. And once we just like expand into like, I exist and I'm safe, everything starts to change. So it's a great question. And it's something that I teach over and over. Go slow, go slower than you think you should be going when you're giving somebody flower essences. You're working with their energetic, their nervous system, their system that has been traumatized. And everyone deals with trauma in a very different way. And we just ultimately need to just start from this very protective, safe cocoon. And then over time, go into those places where it's very real and they're aware of their story and their trauma.
Great. Thank you. That was a beautiful answer.
Yeah. I know it sounds like you have a lot going on, but this work mixed with Ray's would be extraordinary. Extraordinary.
I can see how they're, so complementary.
So complementary. I mean, I feel like when I did my session with Ray, it was like I understood it because of all my time with flower essences. And I got into a way deeper, like I knew my story. I knew like what I was going to share with him. And then there was this whole other thing that came forward. And, so many of the women who go through our program are doulas, work in the birth world, work with postpartum. And I mean, Ray's work specifically is just, it's beyond that and would go really well with all those other pieces as well. But we have a lot of women within our community who are working in perinatal and postpartum psychology. So it's a beautiful time period to
well, I know that's my calling is to work in that area. And so I think this would be a great piece to add to it. So well,
we're here for you. And we do, I don't think you were here at the beginning, but we do have one partial scholarship available. So if you are interested, that's always a nice thing, is a financial little break with tuition. And
I've got too many courses going on right now.
I know it sounds like it, especially if you're taking that one in Canada, but we'll always be here. And it's my mission, just like Ray's mission, is get this information out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any other questions or shares? I'm going to just mute you again, Lynn. Just make sure there's no feedback. So, there's a plethora of information. I actually have a YouTube channel where I have even, more information about this specific topic, and of course, other ways you can use flower essences. So, there's millions of plants and trees in this world. And so there's a million ways that we can really work with our emotions. And the more specific we get with ourselves and the more honest we are with ourselves, the more specific we can get with flower essences and the quicker the results are. So I just think they're the fast track for sure. And done in a way that's in partnership with your soul. So our practitioner certification program begins in 8 days, and super exciting. I'm always getting just so amped when the practitioner program starts. And it's a little bit more than 4 months. Most of it's online. We do have an in-person retreat in Ojai, and there's 13 live calls. There's additional videos and calls that are uploaded to our password protected site. And it's really a mix of shamanic practices, like really how can we deepen our communication, our connection with the plants, and a real clinical system, and that's really important to me, because because flower essences can be looked at as a little like airy fairy, it's so important to me that they're grounded into a real clinical system. So for those of you who are drawn to really working with trauma and really understanding how to support somebody going from places of rupture and wounding and pains and hurts into more of a whole empowered way of living, this system is like easy and amazing that I teach. And then we have, you get 3 one-on-one sessions. And this is a really important piece to me because, we're only as good as we ourselves have journeyed. So when we are a practitioner and we go through our own experience with flower essences, we can hold space way more powerfully for our clients because maybe we haven't walked through their footsteps and had the exact same, life experiences. But we can understand betrayal, boundaries crossed, self-worth, the things we've talked about today, feeling unsafe, feeling mistrustful, all these different things that we as women feel. And because you yourself have used, let's say you've used a flower essence for betrayal, you know how it feels in your body and you know the results that it created in your behavior and your pattern and your life. You just become that much more powerful. So it's a non-negotiable part of this program for me is that you have sessions with either myself or one of our other certified practitioners so that you're amazing at what you do. I'm not really interested in teaching women to be practitioners who aren't profound in their work. I'm interested in bringing this medicine out into the world in a really grounded and powerful way. And the powerful way is that women get results. So there's so much that's included. I put the link for our website to read more in the chat, the little sidebar. And we start in a week. So it is by application only. And that way I get to make sure that it's the right next step for you and for me and for us as a collective, because this is really grounded in sisterhood, and all these women are going through very similar things and choosing to follow the call of the plants and ground their either current practice or they're starting a new practice in the wisdom of Mother Earth. So there's lots of goodness here. And so, okay, so Lauren left. So Ash, you're here. I don't know, do you have any questions about what I spoke about or the practitioner program? Anything that's present for you? Just want to make sure, since there's such a small trio of us. I'm enjoying listening. Okay, great. So I think I feel complete there. I feel like I gave you the content. If there's no questions, then, we have a home study course. If you want to just dabble and start to get into the alchemy of flower essences, we have our practitioner training course. And there's lots of free videos as well to, again, really, it's time for us to get out of our stories. It's time for us to live into our dreams. And really it's time for us to anchor all of that into the wisdom of the plants and to really hear nature, because gosh, the trees and the plants are just like, oh, I want to talk to all of you. I want to share this medicine. So, that could just be a walk in the woods near your house, or that can be actually setting up time to sit and attune with a plant and connect. So it's a really important piece for all of us to get quiet and to remember we are nature as well. So with that, I thank you for coming, and best wishes on your journeys and who you're touching and how you're offering your gifts, and just sending lots of love. So much love. Have a beautiful day. Blessings.